Tonight, a story of immense consequence. The Supreme Court of the United States has overturned the sweeping tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. This is not just a legal footnote, it's a seismic event. The economic landscape that has defined global trade for nearly a decade has been fundamentally altered in a single day. The rules of the game have changed, and the world is scrambling to understand the new reality. Hundreds of billions of dollars in taxes on imported goods, taxes that reshaped supply chains and sparked trade wars, are now gone. These tariffs were a cornerstone of the America First agenda, designed to protect American industries and jobs, but they also ignited fierce international retaliation. Now, with a single ruling, that entire framework has been declared unconstitutional. Global markets are in a frenzy, and leaders worldwide are holding emergency meetings. We'll break down what happened, what it means for you, and how the Supreme Court reached its decision. We'll hear from traders on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange as they navigated the initial chaos. We'll also explore the political fallout and what this means for the legacy of Donald Trump's presidency. This story touches every corner of the globe and every aspect of our economy. The core question is simple: what happens now that the economic walls have come tumbling down? The news broke quietly this morning, but its impact was anything but quiet. Within minutes, financial markets jolted, the US dollar fluctuated, and stock futures soared for manufacturing and agricultural companies. Stay with us as we unpack this historic ruling and its far-reaching consequences. To understand today's decision, we have to go back to 2018. Then President Donald Trump argued that the US had been taken advantage of for decades, pointing to trade deficits and lost manufacturing jobs. His solution: tariffs, taxes on imported goods, designed to make them more expensive. The legal basis was Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, allowing tariffs if imports threaten national security. Historically, this was used sparingly, but Trump interpreted national security in a broad, economic sense. This led to sweeping tariffs on steel, aluminum, and eventually a vast array of Chinese goods. The first major move: 25% tariffs on steel and 10% on aluminum in March 2018. The goal was to protect American producers from cheap foreign metals. But the focus soon shifted to China, citing Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974 to address unfair trade practices. The administration accused China of intellectual property theft and forced technology transfers, leading to escalating tariffs on over $350 billion in Chinese imports. Retaliation was swift. China targeted American agriculture, and the EU hit iconic US products. What began as protectionism quickly spiraled into a multi-front trade war. Global supply chains were thrown into chaos. Companies had to rethink sourcing and sales, a costly and complicated process. The tariffs defined the global economic narrative for years. The world did not stand by idly. Every action sparked a reaction. The stage was set for today's dramatic reversal. The tariffs' impact was immediate and deeply felt across American industries. Domestic steel and aluminum producers like US Steel and Nucor benefited, restarting plants and rehiring workers. For some communities, it felt like a revival of American industry. But for every winner, there were many losers. Manufacturers using steel and aluminum, auto, appliance, and beverage companies faced higher costs. They either absorbed losses or passed costs to consumers, raising prices on cars, washing machines, and even soda. The agricultural sector was hit hardest by retaliatory tariffs. China, once the largest buyer of US soybeans, imposed tariffs, devastating Midwest farmers. Soybean prices plummeted, and farm incomes nosedived. Government aid helped, but many family farms faced bankruptcy. The tariffs on Chinese goods made electronics, furniture, clothing, and toys more expensive. Small businesses relying on imports were squeezed, lacking the leverage of larger corporations. The trade war created uncertainty, delaying investments and dragging on economic growth. Businesses hesitated, unsure of the next policy move. The interconnectedness of the global economy became painfully clear. The costs rippled through every sector, affecting jobs and prices nationwide. The landscape of winners and losers was constantly shifting. This morning, the Supreme Court delivered its landmark ruling in American Importers Association versus United States. The decision was a narrow 5-4 vote, reflecting deep divisions. Chief Justice Roberts, writing for the majority, focused on presidential authority under Section 232. The court found that the broad economic definition of national security used to justify the tariffs went far beyond Congress's intent. Allowing such a broad interpretation would give the executive branch unchecked power over foreign commerce, a power reserved for Congress. The ruling draws a line: presidents can act on genuine security threats, but not use that authority for broad economic policy. The majority dissected the legislative history, concluding the law was meant for targeted threats, not long-term industrial policy. The dissent, led by Justice Gorsuch, argued for deference to the executive in national security matters. They warned the ruling could tie future presidents' hands in facing new threats. The case was brought by businesses and trade groups harmed by the tariffs, arguing executive overreach. After years in lower courts, the Supreme Court agreed to hear the case last spring. Today's decision is the culmination of that long legal battle. It pits presidential power against Congress's constitutional authority, with the global economy at stake. The ruling is a significant check on executive power in trade. The legal landscape for future trade actions has been fundamentally changed. The reaction in financial markets was immediate and dramatic. The Dow surged over 800 points in the first hour of trading. Companies hit hard by tariffs. Automakers, heavy equipment manufacturers, saw their stocks soar. Domestic steel producers, once protected, saw their shares dip. It was a massive, instant repricing of risk across the market. Financial leaders worldwide echoed the optimism, with European and Asian markets posting strong gains. The Secretary of Commerce expressed disappointment, calling tariffs vital for national security. Manufacturing groups hailed the decision as a victory for businesses and consumers. Internationally, the response was cautious optimism. Europe welcomed the move. China urged the U.S. to remove all remaining tariffs. The world is watching to see if this legal decision leads to real de-escalation of trade tensions. The conflicting reactions highlight deep economic and political divisions. The global market is bracing for what comes next. What does this Supreme Court decision mean for you? For years, tariffs meant higher prices on everyday goods, electronics, bikes, shoes. With tariffs gone, prices should start to come down, though not overnight. As companies place new orders, lower costs will eventually reach consumers. Economists predict noticeable price drops within 3 to 6 months, easing inflation and freeing up household budgets. For workers and industries using steel and aluminum, lower material costs could mean more jobs and investment. But for domestic steel and aluminum workers, competition from imports could threaten jobs. For farmers, the decision is a potential lifeline. If China lifts retaliatory tariffs, American agriculture could regain access to massive markets, boosting incomes. The hope is for a rebound in farm prices and stability for struggling family farms. The effects will ripple through the economy, touching every household. The end of tariffs could feel like a small tax cut for many families. The trade war's impact on your wallet may finally be easing. The political ramifications are immense. The administration faces a policy vacuum. How to approach trade without tariffs? Expect a pivot to diplomacy, negotiations, and the World Trade Organization. For Trump's America First wing, this is a blow to his economic legacy, and a rallying cry against judicial overreach. Democrats are split. Some welcome a return to rules-based trade. Others worry about exposing workers to unfair competition. Congress is thrust back into the center of trade policy. The Constitution gives Congress authority over foreign commerce. The court's ruling is a reminder of that fact. Expect hearings, debates, and new legislation aimed at modernizing trade policy. The era of unilateral tariffs may be over. Legislative debate is back. The future of U.S. trade will be shaped in Congress, not the Oval Office. A new chapter in American trade policy begins now. To understand the ruling's significance, we spoke with a constitutional law expert. She explained, this case was about separation of powers. Who decides major economic policy? The Constitution gives Congress the power to tax and regulate foreign commerce. The court said Congress did not hand the president a blank check. The majority opinion was classic statutory interpretation, limiting national security to its intended meaning. The decision puts a guardrail on executive power. Future presidents must show a direct link to national security. The dissenters believe in a strong executive, especially in foreign policy. They see the ruling as judicial activism intruding on the president's role. This fundamental disagreement over power is at the heart of many major cases. The balance between branches is now front and center in trade policy. A historic day, Trump-era tariffs struck down, global trade redrawn, markets surged, businesses and consumers breathed a sigh of relief. But the challenges the tariffs targeted, China's practices, lost manufacturing jobs, supply chain vulnerabilities, remain. The debate over solutions is wide open again. Will the US return to coalition building and the WTO, or will Congress craft new, targeted trade tools? The decision is a reminder of checks and balances. Even the presidency is limited by law. The conversation about America's role in the global economy is just beginning. The road ahead requires thoughtful leadership and public engagement. The future of global trade is being written now. Today, a major new page was turned.